most people say they want love, what they actually want is safety. They want reassurance. They want validation. They want to be chosen without having to choose themselves. They want intimacy without exposure, connection without risk, union without transformation. Carl Jung saw through this with brutal clarity when he said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power." He was not romanticizing love. He was indicting everything that passes for it. Because most relationships are not built on love, they are built on power disguised as care, control disguised as concern, dependency disguised as devotion, fear disguised as loyalty, need disguised as intimacy. Love, real love, does not need leverage. It does not require manipulation. It does not bargain, threaten, guilt, or bind. And that is precisely why it is rare. Because love requires something most people are unwilling to give up: their unconscious will to power. The will to be needed. The will to be desired. The will to be irreplaceable. The will to matter through another person. Most people don't enter relationships to love. They enter to secure themselves. They want someone to regulate their emotions. Someone to anchor their identity. Someone to confirm their worth. Someone to absorb their loneliness. And the moment another human becomes responsible for stabilizing your inner world, power has already entered the relationship. Love does not need possession, but insecurity does. Love does not need control, but fear does. Love does not demand, but unmet needs do. So what is commonly called love is often just mutual dependency wrapped in poetic language. Two people gripping each other, so neither has to face themselves. Jung understood that power is not always loud. It doesn't always dominate openly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it clings. Sometimes it sacrifices. Sometimes power looks like selflessness. I gave up everything for you. I can't live without you. You're my whole world. I only feel safe with you. These are not declarations of love. They are declarations of psychological captivity. Where love rules, there is no will to power, because love does not need to own. Power always needs ownership. And this is where the truth becomes uncomfortable. Most people are terrified of love because love threatens their strategies. Love strips away leverage. Love dissolves manipulation. Love makes coercion impossible. Love does not bind, it frees. And freedom is unbearable to a psyche built on fear. So instead of love, people choose attachment. Attachment feels similar, but it is fundamentally different. Attachment says, stay because I need you. Love says, stay because you choose to. Attachment contracts. Attachment controls. Love trusts. Attachment fears loss. Love accepts impermanence. And because attachment feels safer, it is mistaken for love. But safety is not the highest value. Truth is. And truth reveals that most relationships are negotiations of power. Who needs whom more? Who can leave? Who is more afraid? Who adapts? Who suppresses? Who follows? These dynamics are rarely conscious. That's what makes them dangerous. People don't say, I need you so I don't have to face myself. They say, I love you. But love does not ask you to abandon yourself. If you must shrink to keep a relationship, power is ruling. If you must perform to be loved, power is ruling. If you must suppress your truth to maintain harmony, power is ruling. If you stay because you're afraid of being alone, power is ruling. Love does not need fear to function. Fear is the fuel of power. And here is the brutal inversion Jung points to. The more someone insists they are acting out of love, the more likely power is at work. Real love is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't moralize. It doesn't keep score. Power keeps score. Power remembers sacrifices. Power tracks imbalance. Power reminds you what it gave. Love forgets itself. This is why love is so threatening. Because love requires psychological maturity. It requires two individuals who can stand alone without collapsing. Two people who are not using each other to avoid emptiness. Two people who can tolerate freedom without interpreting it as abandonment. Most people cannot, so they replace love with bonds, with roles, with expectations, with contracts. and they call it commitment. If this content making sense to you, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for your support. But commitment without freedom is not love. It is mutual imprisonment. Jung's statement cuts through centuries of romantic illusion. If there is manipulation, love is absent. If there is coercion, love is absent. If there is fear of truth, love is absent. If there is power struggle, love is absent. Love and power cannot coexist. One dissolves the other. And this is the part no one wants to hear. Most people don't want love. They want security with benefits. Love would require them to relinquish control, to let the other be fully other, to risk loss without resentment, to choose without ownership. That is too destabilizing. So instead, they choose attachment and call it love because the word sounds better. But the psyche knows the difference, and it shows up as resentment, as boredom, as subtle aggression, as emotional manipulation, as passive control, as silent punishment. Because where power rules, love cannot breathe. Most power in relationships does not look like domination. It looks like need. This is why it is so difficult to expose. Power wears the mask of vulnerability and calls itself intimacy. I just need you. I don't feel whole without you. You're the only one who understands me. I gave everything for us. These statements sound loving. They are not. They are bids for control. Not conscious control, psychological control. Because the moment your emotional stability depends on another person's presence, power has entered the dynamic. Not through cruelty, but through dependence. Jung understood this pattern deeply. He knew that the will to power does not disappear when it is denied. It goes underground. When a person cannot express power openly, they express it indirectly. Through sacrifice, through guilt, through emotional withdrawal, through moral superiority, through everything I've done for you. This is how love becomes a battlefield without anyone ever raising their voice. Power in relationships thrives on imbalance. Who needs more? Who fears loss more? Who compromises more? Who adapts more? Who suppresses more? And the one who needs more is always at a disadvantage. This is where masculinity and femininity often become distorted. Masculinity collapses into control. Femininity collapses into manipulation, not because of gender, but because of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of insignificance, fear of being alone with oneself. So men attempt to dominate or withdraw emotionally to retain leverage, and women attempt to bind or sacrifice themselves to maintain attachment. Again, not always consciously. But power does not need consciousness. It only needs fear. The more someone says, I only want what's best for you, the more you should ask, at what cost to your freedom? Love does not require surveillance. Power does. Love does not require obedience. Power does. Love does not demand emotional exclusivity as a condition for safety. Power does. Where love rules, each person remains sovereign. Where power rules, one person becomes the emotional regulator for the other. This is why many relationships feel suffocating, even when there is no overt abuse. The suffocation comes from being needed too much, from being responsible for another's sense of self, from carrying emotional weight that was never meant to be shared that way. Love invites, power obligates. Love says, I choose you. Power says, you owe me. And the more insecure the psyche, the more subtle the tactics. Power hides in, care, don't do that, it's bad for you. I'm worried about you. I just want to protect us. Protection becomes restriction. Concern becomes control. The line is crossed the moment your autonomy is framed as a threat. Real love does not fear autonomy. It celebrates it. Because love does not need the other to be smaller in order to feel secure. Only insecurity does. Jung's insight reveals something even more unsettling. Power is often strongest where people believe they are being selfless. The martyr is often the most controlling figure in the room. Because sacrifice creates debt, and debt is power. I gave up my dreams for you. I stayed when I should have left. I endured things no one else would. These are not expressions of love, they are receipts. And love does not keep receipts. Power does. This is why resentment accumulates even in relationships that appear stable. Because power can never be satisfied. It always needs confirmation. Love, by contrast, is sufficient. It does not cling. It does not monitor. It does not punish. It allows the other to leave. And that is what makes it real. This is the paradox most people cannot tolerate. If you need someone to stay, you cannot love them. Love requires the genuine possibility of loss. Without that possibility, what you have is possession. And possession always rots. People sense this unconsciously. That's why they feel trapped, why desire fades, why intimacy dries up, why attraction turns into obligation, because power drains eros. Desire needs freedom. When freedom disappears, the psyche rebels. Through fantasy, through infidelity, through emotional numbness. Not because people are immoral, but because the soul resists captivity. Love allows movement. Power restricts it. And now we arrive at the core danger of Jung's quote, where love truly rules, power must die. And power does not die quietly. It resists. It disguises itself. It moralizes. It accuses. It tells you that freedom is selfish, that autonomy is abandonment, that boundaries are cruelty, that independence is disloyalty. These are the weapons of attachment, not love. Love does not require the other to betray themselves in order to belong. And this is why love is rare. Because most people would rather control than trust. They would rather bind than risk. They would rather possess than encounter another soul as equal. They want love, but they want it without freedom. And that is impossible. Most people are not incapable of love. They are incapable of freedom. And without freedom, love cannot exist. This is the truth hidden inside Jung's sentence. The reason it cuts so deeply when taken seriously. Love is not an emotion. It is not attachment. It is not warmth or closeness or chemistry. Love is a psychological condition. It emerges only when two individuals no longer need each other to survive emotionally. That alone eliminates most relationships. Because most people do not want a partner. They want a regulator. Someone to stabilize their moods. Someone to soothe their anxiety. Someone to confirm their worth. Someone to protect them from themselves. And the moment another human becomes responsible for your inner balance, love is impossible. Why? Because love requires risk without leverage. It requires saying, I choose you, but I do not own you. I stay, but I could leave. I am connected, but not dependent. That kind of stance terrifies the insecure psyche, so the psyche reaches for power instead. Not domination insurance, emotional contracts, unspoken rules, invisible debts, subtle threats of withdrawal. Moral pressure disguised as care. This is how love is replaced by management. And management kills eros. The soul cannot breathe where it is monitored. This is why passion fades in relationships built on need. This is why attraction suffocates under obligation. This is why intimacy becomes routine. Not because time destroys love, but because power replaces it. Jung understood that the will to power is not evil. It is primitive. It arises when the ego is afraid of abandonment, afraid of insignificance, afraid of standing alone, afraid of being unchosen. So instead of risking love, people attempt to secure permanence. If this content making sense to you, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for your support. But permanence cannot be secured through control. It can only be endured through trust. And trust requires something most people lack: a self that can stand alone without collapsing. This is the real dividing line. Those who can love and those who can only attach. Those who can let the other be free, and those who must bind to feel safe. Those who can tolerate uncertainty, and those who demand guarantees. Love belongs only to the first group, because love does not complete you. It meets you. It does not stabilize you. It encounters you. It does not rescue you from yourself. It asks that you already be in relationship with yourself. This is why individuation matters. A person who has not confronted their own emptiness will try to fill it with another human. A person who has not integrated their shadow will project it into the relationship as control, jealousy, or moral superiority. A person who has not developed inner authority will seek authority through emotional leverage. And none of that is love. It is survival. Love is only possible after survival. After you no longer need someone to give your life meaning. After you no longer need to be chosen to feel real. After you no longer need to bind in order to belong. This is why love feels so rare. It requires maturity that most cultures do not cultivate. Cultures teach attachment. They teach dependency. They teach romantic fusion. They do not teach individuation. So people grow up longing for love while being structurally unprepared for it. And when love actually appears, in its quiet, spacious, non-coercive form, they often reject it. Because it feels unfamiliar, it lacks intensity, it lacks urgency, it lacks drama. There is no power struggle to keep the nervous system activated. So they mistake love for boredom and return to attachment because attachment feels alive. This is the final tragedy. Jung points toward power feels exciting. Love feels calm. Power feels necessary. Love feels optional. Power feeds the ego. Love dissolves it. And most egos would rather feel important than be free. So they choose relationships that confirm their wounds instead of relationships that require their growth. They choose bonds over encounters, control over trust, security over truth, and they call it love. But where love truly rules, there is no will to power, no manipulation, no leverage, no fear-based attachment, no emotional debt. Just two sovereign beings choosing each other without needing to own. That is not romantic. It is terrifying. Because it demands that you give up the one thing you've been using to feel safe control. And only those who have faced themselves deeply enough can afford to do that. Everyone else will keep calling attachment love and wonder why it feels hollow, why desire fades, why resentment grows, why intimacy becomes labor. Because power can bind two people together, but it can never unite them. Love can. And that is why it is rare. And that is why, where love rules, power must disappear.